And I was like, that's cool.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Daily Grind Fantasy Week 8 pre-lock live stream, brought to you by TJ, Kevin, and Matt. This is the very first of the month of November, as you guys know. Happy Halloween, by the way, for anybody who I didn't wish that to yesterday. The first of the month means that Patreon restarts. So what that does mean is that you can grab the full value of Patreon, all the tools that we have for every single sport across DFS. So again, if you are hesitant, if you're ever on the fence about signing up for Patreon, now is the day to do it. Again, for $20 a month, it gets you a premium Discord chat where you talk to everybody about DFS all day long. NFL cheat sheets, leverage sheets, shows you where to leverage yourself against the field. The only way to play DFS is by leveraging yourself against the field and taking down GPPs that way. Take those low-owned studs that are going to push you to the very front of all GPPs. The Millie Maker never has high-owned guys. They're always sitting in the 20% or lower range. And again, we give you the best plays. A lot of the stacks, including our Green Bay stacks, have appeared in the optimal. So again, if you want to see more success, head over to our Twitter, head over to Patreon. Again, all of this is $20 a month. Gets you that and so much more. How are you guys doing this morning, TJ and Kevin?
TJ?
Hi, Kevin. Matt, hi.
What's
How
going
are
on?
you, gentlemen?
I'm doing awesome. How are you?
So
I'm good.
what we have to
Matt,
talk
how are
about,
you?
doing good. What we have to talk about this morning is the weather concerns, because I feel like everywhere I turn this morning, on Twitter, on ESPN even, everybody's been talking about the weather and how that's going to impact the scores. Now, during the week, it opened up very optimistic. All of the over-unders were actually very high, and they've come down so much since the very start. So we're going to give all of that a look. Right now I have up on my page Kevin Roth, the man, the myth, and the legend, who is always providing some of the best weather reports for MLB, but now he does NFL, obviously, because MLB is not playing. So let's go ahead over that real quick. Tennessee and Cincinnati. 20-mile-an-hour gusts, going over 30 predicted during game time. So guess what, guys? Might be a game you want to avoid throwing or taking maybe some running backs, maybe pairing some running backs in that game. Now, again, keep in mind, this will shift the ownership lower, so might push down some of the ownership on Joe Burrow, Ryan Tannehill, some of those quarterbacks and wide receivers. So take that as you will. The Jets in Kansas City, green. They are good to go. Nothing over 10 miles an hour. We have the Rams, Miami, also green. Typical Florida weather. The Patriots and Buffalo Bills game, guys, I hate to tell you, TJ and Kevin, completely avoid is what he's saying here. Over 30 mile an hour gusts. Same thing for the Rams in Cleveland, about 25 to 30. A lot of running overall pretty much in the NFL with the exception of the Jets, Kansas City, Rams and Miami. Again, guys, I'm not saying avoid the stacks completely with the quarterbacks and wide receivers, but I'm also saying be hesitant towards taking guys, especially in cash. So I'll start out with that. Minnesota and Green Bay is also having over 30 mile an hour winds. I know it's like all over the U.S. The Saints, Chicago, yellow is what he pinned it at, and same thing with Dallas. We don't have to talk about them because they're not in the slate. So let's go ahead, with that being known, let's go ahead and look at the adjusted ownership. With all the weather reports, by the way, it's been shifting the ownership all morning long. So what I sent you guys is up to date as of 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock a.m. this morning. So we will look at the adjusted here on my screen. Let's go ahead and start out by talking at about the quarterback position, if you guys don't mind. I'll start at the top. Jimmy G is now the highest owned guy on at the quarterback position at 13.8%. And I know, Kevin, I'm going to actually pitch this over to you because you loved Jimmy G. We talked about it in our tier ranking video, just for the price tag, 5.4K. And they haven't talked about San Francisco and Seattle being that high or that big of a risk game for throwing the ball. We know how bad Seattle's defense is, and it's also a comparison here with Russell Wilson at 13% ownership. So both of these quarterbacks are going to be very high owned. Do you believe in that? Do you like Jimmy G here for a cash option?
I do. I think Jimmy G's lack of, success in fantasy usually comes from game script and the team's ability to keep, for Kyle Shanahan to run the offense and run the game that he wants to run. I think Seattle's going to throw a wrench in that with their offense, and they're also going to throw a wrench in that with how bad their defense is, especially against the pass. So I think this has shoot up potential written all over it. And Jimmy G every single year has a couple ceiling games where he drops like at 30 plus, and I think this is one of those games. Yeah.
TJ, you agree with that?
Yeah, I'm really big on Jimmy, especially in cash. But Matt, real quick, I just want to touch base on those weather games.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. So there are 4 games that I was really looking at in terms of really high wins, and I'm glad you covered it because I was looking at Kevin Roth and what he had to say as well. It's the Patriots and Bills game, the Raiders in Cleveland, Minnesota and Green Bay, and then the Saints in Chicago. You touch base on all of those. And just a quick note on all of those over-unders. The Patriots and Bills opened up at 46. It's now down to 41. Raiders and Browns opened up at 55.5. It's now down to 47.5. So that's dropped 8 points.
Yeah.
Vikings Packers at 55.5, now down to 48. And the Titans and Bengals opened up at 55.5, now down to 50. So a lot of these games, you're seeing these unders getting hammered. In result, all those live lines are going down drastically. And somebody just asked in the chat, why does weather have such an effect? It's just the wind, and having to throw in 30 to 40 mile an hour gusts is so difficult to do. So it's a lot of checkdowns, and I feel like you're forced to run the ball more. So I just wanted to add that in. But back to what we were talking about, Jimmy G. Definitely love him this weekend or today against Seattle. That's given up the most DraftKings points to opposing quarterbacks at 30.6 points. Second most passing yards, and they're 30th in DVOA against the pass as well. And also they have the 4th least sacks per play in the NFL. So that should result in Jimmy G having a lot of time to have guys get open. Obviously, we have no Debo this weekend, so I expect a heavy dose of guys like Kittle, Ayuk, and Bourne. You touch base on this being one of the highest over-under, still at 54, which it is. I expect a shootout type game. Yeah, and the 49ers are 3-point dogs, so it should be competitive. So yeah, Jimmy G at 5,400 definitely offers you salary saving, and I definitely love him for cash.
Yeah, I think he's going to end up being good chalk. I mean, there's nothing to hate about this game in general. And yeah, like I just said, this game is the highest over-under by 3 points. And then the next one's Tennessee and Cincinnati. And then we're talking about a Minnesota and Green Bay game at 49.5. Not to jump too far ahead, but like the leverage potential on the slate is so good. When you're looking across the league, all these over-unders, like you just alluded to, have dropped just drastically. One game I do like to just kind of that kind of stands out that nobody's really talked about is this Pittsburgh-Baltimore game that stayed pretty much the same here, the 44 over-under, and it actually moved up to 46. So definitely some good leverage games to target. It looks like everybody is going to be on the San Francisco-Seattle game. So Russell Wilson, I even want to talk about him. Obvious play, the best player right now in the NFL, just statistically and for DFS at 13%. Patrick Mahomes against the Jets, Kevin, is actually third highest on the slate, 11.7% at 8.1K. I know we talked about this many times throughout the week, but now the over-under's at a -20, or sorry, the spread is at a -20. The over-under's at a 49. With them being a 20-point favorite, are you even looking at Patrick Mahomes?
No, I'm really not.
Okay.
I just, like I said, it's just a 20-point favorite. It's absolutely comical. I think his floor's pretty high, but his ceiling is just lowered on this one. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
just, I'm not doubting the talent. I think this matchup, like I said before, this might be the best team in the NFL versus the worst team in the NFL. So that's usually not a good matchup for from a DFS perspective.
Yeah, and the one thing to note about this game is Kevin Roth gave you the green, which means go for playing this game because obviously the weather is not crazy. So Patrick Mahomes should be able to throw in this game. I think is the only bright spot I'd say for this offense. So, could end up being a decent GPP play rather than a cash play. I know we're talking about cash right now, but yeah, I would completely avoid cash. I think Jimmy G and Russell Wilson, just so much more upside than obviously going the safer route there, especially with salary saving for Jimmy G. TJ.
Going to be a Le'Veon revenge game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a good point, actually. Patrick Mahomes, TJ, are you playing him?
Not in cash. I'll have some tournament plays with him for sure, just because, we know what that offense is and how unbelievable they can be, how quick they can hit, and especially against a terrible Jets defense. But it was the special teams and the defense that got it done from last weekend when they hung 43 on the Broncos. So yeah, it's a tough game script to try and figure out when they're 20-point favorites playing against the worst team in the NFL. We could see heavy doses of guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire and obviously Le'Veon Bell going back to playing his former team against the Jets. But yeah, I mean, I could easily see Mahomes throwing 3 touchdowns in the first half, but it's that second half. Like, what kind of workload is he going to get? Could we see Chad Henne in the fourth quarter? Things like that. So definitely more of a tournament play for me. I'm going to stay away from him for cash.
Completely agree there. I want to move on to the next two because they're in the same game, and we've talked about the Cincinnati-Tennessee game. Obviously, love this from a pivot perspective and a leverage perspective. Joe Burrow, Ryan Tannehill, 6.2K and 6.8K, 9.7%, 8.7%. Kevin, are you playing them in cash? Do you consider them better pivots for GPP?
I mean, with what you just alluded to, Joe Burrow seems to be a couple red flags on him, correct?
For what? Oh, you mean for the in
terms of weather?
The weather.
The inclement weather.
Yep. Yeah, just a little
somewhat.
bit, but it's also still the second highest over under. So.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I like I said, I do like Joe Burrow. I like his opportunity. I think this could be that game. I talked about him as, what I mark him as when we did our quarterback breakdown, Matt, is an A, I think.
Yep.
And I talked about him as my Who's That Player video. I just think that Titans defense, it's not at the same Titans defense as years past. Like I said, 7th most yards allowed, I believe, to either opposing quarterbacks or wide receivers. So, pretty similar stat there. So I think it's a live game for Joe Burrow, 100%. I think his upside is huge. Obviously, coming after a 39-point game, you kind of see the ceiling that this kid, has is a potential. Not expecting him to do that again, but there's also not a lot of people in the NFL who can reach a 40-point game. There really isn't.
Right.
So, we count him on almost one hand. So the fact that he can do that, and at this young age, I mean, against this matchup, I definitely like Joe Burrow. And who was the other one?
Ryan Tannehill, same game.
Same game. Ryan Tannehill, same thing. He's been lights out all year. Someone I just never thought I'd be talking about from this perspective of DFS. But I mean, like I said, this isn't the Titans of years past, and it's certainly not the Ryan Tannehill of, the Miami Dolphins. This is Ryan Tannehill who's cleared 30 points 2 times this year, and cleared, and then got also a 27-point game. He's kind of I don't want to say boom or bust from a GPP perspective, just at that price tag. I'm going to say he's a boom or bust, but for like cash games, his floor is very high.
Yeah,
I agree. What I mean? He's had a 16-point game as his lowest. His floor is very high. He's very talented, great offense, good spot to be in, especially against this team we just talked about in the Bengals. But I do think, from a GPP perspective, at 6,800, he's going to hit his price point some of the times, and he's going to fall short some of the times too.
TJ, are you playing these guys in cash? Are you considering them good GPP pivots like Kevin?
Yeah, I'm not too high on Tannehill in terms of cash.
Okay.
I would definitely rather go to the other side of the ball with Burrow at 6,200. Definitely a good matchup, like Kevin said, against the Titans. They rank 19th in DVOA against the pass, and they're dead last in adjusted sack rate, meaning that Joe Burrow should have time in the pocket. Like I said, with Garoppolo going up against Seattle, same kind of thing. So he should have time, to get guys open and hit some spots. He's already attempted 44 or more passes in 3 of his 7 NFL starts, and he's on pace currently to set the all-time drop back record for a quarterback, which is just absolutely absurd in your rookie year. And on top of all that, we have Joe Mixon out, and we saw him on the goal line last week and actually have a rushing touchdown. So it kind of seems like they'd rather go to him than Gio, just a bigger body, a guy that might be able to push the pile a little bit better than Gio. So he also has that rushing upside if they find themselves in that type of situation in the red zone. Obviously, we saw what he did against the Browns. He went for 39 DraftKings points, absolutely smoked them. Unfortunately, they couldn't get the win. And again, a cheap quarterback at home as an underdog, always a pretty good spot to target. So a guy like Joe Burrow at 6,200 is definitely somebody that I like in cash. Again, I'm leaning a little bit more towards Jimmy Garoppolo. I really like his upside against Seattle, but I wouldn't hate having Joe Burrow in my cash lineups either.
Completely agree with that. One thing I want to touch base on, guys, before we move on. Guys, in the chat, I see you guys spamming the questions about the weather, about cash lineups and all that. Feel free to keep asking those questions. We will get to them a little bit later in the stream, okay? Don't feel like you're annoying us whatsoever. We will get to those questions, I promise, by the end of stream, okay? So feel free to ask all those questions. One thing I want to add about Joe Burrow and Ryan Tannehill, just strictly from a GPP perspective here. Joe Burrow is showing higher percentage ownership. Ryan Tannehill lower by 1%, granted. He's also slightly higher in salary, but guys, Tennessee's favored by 7 points. So Ryan Tannehill should have the better game, right? I mean, if you're thinking logically, at least looking at Vegas odds. So what I love about Tennessee is that these Cincinnati guys are taking so much more ownership than Tennessee. I love them for GPPs. I absolutely love Ryan Tannehill more so than Joe Burrow, looking at it from an ownership perspective. I do not like Joe Burrow just because he's a great pivot off of Ryan Tannehill at 6.2K. Obviously, people are going to go right down to him, and with there being so much salary saving and looking at the wide receiver picture with them being so cheap, it's just I feel like he's going to garnish all the chalk or garner all the chalk. Kevin.
We're not talking about salads, Matt.
Yeah, I know. We had a debate before about how to say that word.
It wasn't a debate. It was just words.
It was just the words. We just don't know how to say words here on the stream.
We're just not good at words.
All right.
Words aren't
I want to move on
to moving, though.
Yeah, let's keep it moving. Let's talk about the GPP. Our favorite GPP options. I know we just talked about Joe Burrow and Ryan Tannehill for half the segment, but if you guys had to take a GPP option here, going a little bit lower down the list, Kevin, who would you choose?
It's funny. It's some of the people who I hate the most. Lamar Jackson. Actually, we're watching his ownership climb, but I'm going to be on Lamar Jackson. He's definitely one of my favorite ones. And then Justin Herbert. I mean, it's going to be. I think it's a tougher matchup. I'm actually playing the opposing defense in one of my season-long games today. So that should tell you that I'm not quite as scared of Herbert as we've been, especially coming off, what do you have, 42 points?
Yeah.
Something ridiculous. So I think the Broncos defense is good. They slow games down, but I mean, it still has the upside. He still has crazy upside. So I think there's potential there, but I'm all over Lamar Jackson. I mean, this is just so cheap. It's a game that they should keep it. It should be a very competitive game. I'm actually really excited to watch this game. And I think his ceiling is so high in this game because of how competitive it should be.
Right. I completely agree, and you just took my GPP option, but that's fine. I have somebody else. TJ, who are you going to talk about?
Who are you saying that Kevin just took? Lamar or Herbert?
Lamar.
Okay, well, I was going to talk about Lamar as well. That line did open up at 49 actually, and it is down 5 points. So the current over under for this game is at 44. But to pile on with what Kevin said, I definitely like Lamar Jackson at low ownership in a divisional game in which should be very competitive. I feel like that running back picture that they have is a mess. So obviously him running the ball is still very, likely. Him to find the end zone is also pretty good. 2 of his last 3 games, he does have a rushing touchdown. I think his passing statistics have been really way down. I mean, he's eclipsed 200 yards twice so far this year, and he hasn't done it since Houston. I mean, against Kansas City, he had 97 total passing yards, which is just absolutely crazy. But yeah, I definitely like his upside at 7,400. I think he's a pretty good pivot off of guys like Aaron Rodgers if people are going there at 7,600. And yeah, just the ownership right there and just the ceiling that we know he can present at times is so high. Obviously not as high this year as it was last year, but at 7,400 with that ownership, I'm definitely liking Lamar for GPPs.
And you just talked about Aaron Rodgers. That was actually my other play. And it's strictly because of the weather report. Like everybody is going to be completely off of Aaron Rodgers, and Jamal Williams is going to take all the chalk. We're going to talk about him here in just a second. But Aaron Rodgers obviously has been in 3 of the 8 optimals to start the season. Can get it to his wide receivers. It's Aaron Rodgers. Like, come on, guys. Don't ignore him. If you're MMEing, do not take him away from your player pool. 5.9% is what he's currently at. I only suspect that will go down. Again, everybody is looking at the San Francisco-Seattle game. Anybody else is a great pivot. So I do like Aaron Rodgers there. That's going to be my favorite GPP option other than Lamar Jackson. Let's go ahead and switch over to running backs. Jamal Williams, let's get this out of the way. 32.9%. TJ, why is he chalk?
He is chalk, Matt, because Aaron Jones is out. And, we saw what Jamal Williams, 6,100 this week. Obviously, Aaron Jones is ruled out again. So I believe Jamal Williams becomes an elite play and a must in terms of cash. Played 89% of the snaps last week for Aaron Jones, obviously replacing him. 24 total touches, 19 carries, and 5 targets. He actually had all 5 of those receptions. Resulted in 104 total yards and a touchdown. Going up against the Vikings that ranked 20th in DVOA against the run and 26th in defensive adjusted line yards. So when you factor all that in, you got to take into consideration the weather as well. The high wind that we're going to see in Green Bay could result in even more carries for a guy like Jamal Williams and maybe even A.J. Dillon a little bit. But still, Jamal Williams carrying that ownership in terms of cash at 6,100. I definitely think that's a guy that you should have in cash lineups and a guy that I will be having in my cash lineups.
100%. I think Jamal Williams, he's actually showing his good chalk on our models here on our leverage sheet. So high upside, definitely for his price tag. 6.1K allows you to save salary to get to some of these other players. Anything to really add, Kevin?
No, it's great chalk.
Yeah. Yep. That's pretty much all you need to say. Kareem Hunt next on the list at 30.8%. TJ, Kareem Hunt, is he still in play here, especially with the weather?
Yeah, again, those are the 2 guys that I want to roster in terms of cash. And pretty evident because they're carrying such high ownership, but I just think the matchups and the weather that we're talking about should result in more running attempts for these 2 guys. Hunt coming off a pretty mediocre game, I think, against the Bengals. He just managed for 100 yards, found the end zone pretty late in that game. He's been one of the most productive running backs so far in the NFL, replacing Nick Chubb. And now he gets to face a Raiders team that ranks 29th in DVOA against the run, 23rd in defense adjusted line yards, and 30th in fantasy points allowed to opposing running backs. So again, I think Kareem Hunt is very underpriced still at 6,900. You add into the fact that we have those weather concerns. I mean, if I can get Kareem Hunt at that ownership at 6,900 and then Jamal Williams at 6,100, those are definitely the 2 running backs that I want for cash. Again, I think it's a very good spot for him, and I think he's very good chalk along with Jamal Williams.
Do you agree with that, Kevin?
Yep, 2 favorite chalk plays right there. I think they're both absolutely live up to the hype.
Yeah, 6.9K too. So you're paying $13,000 for 2 running backs, and again in huge smash spots. So just a lot of salary saving across the board at the running back position. It looks like that is going to be the general direction that we go. Going next on the list here are 2 pay-up options actually. Derrick Henry, I'll go ahead and include them in the same sentence here. Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara at 26.3%, Kamara at 19.2%. If you are paying up in cash, TJ, are you preferring one or the other?
So hard to pick, isn't it?
Because
like
it's tough.
You mentioned, obviously that Tennessee and Cincinnati has a very high, or not a very high, they have a higher over under. Looks like 7 more total points projected in that game than we see in the Saints and Bears game. And you also mentioned that Tennessee are 7-point favorites. So if they can get, a healthy lead, you could see Derrick Henry easily eclipse 20 carries, 25 carries even. He's actually had 20 carries in every single game except for one in which he had 19 carries. So it's pretty obvious that Derrick Henry is going to get the opportunities to run the ball, especially if they're up. But for me, if I can get Alvin Kamara almost the same ownership for $200 more, I think that's where I'm going to go because you have Michael Thomas out again. You have Emmanuel Sanders out again.
Right.
We saw Callaway last week actually show up. He's out. So That wide receiver core is
Crazy.
just completely banged up. And we're looking at the weather again. It's not looking good. Looks like high wind. So Drew Brees, that should result in a bunch of dump offs to Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at Kamara's stats, he's had 8 receptions in his last 2 games. I mean, it's pretty obvious that he's going to see the targets. He's had 18 targets in his last 2 games. He's going to be involved in the passing game as well as running the ball, 25 attempts in his last 2 games. So if this is going to be a close and competitive game, there's going to be wind. I expect a lot of dump offs to guys like Kamara, even Jared Cook. And, you know, it is tough to say that I like them both. I think you can go Henry or Kamara. But for me, I'm leaning toward Kamara just because all those guys being out, the offense is 100% going to go through him. It's going to be involved on most plays. And, you know, that's kind of my thought process right now.
You know, TJ, we always talk about usage in the NBA. I can't imagine what Kamara's usage rate's going to be today, even if it is bad. Yeah, he's going to get so much.
For sure.
Kevin, if you had to pick one or the other, who are you going? Do you agree with TJ with Kamara?
TJ's keeping me on hush mode today.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just
you like that?
I mean, everything.
Well, that's good. That means we're on the same page, right?
Yeah, no, it's a good thing. Everything.
And I'm so annoying. I just don't shut up.
I know. I love it. No, it's literally every single aspect that you're hitting is everything. I believe in pass catching, who's out, who's, you know, the matchup, everything. And I think it's 1A and 1B. But if I was picking, I'd try to make sure you reach Kamara. I mean, he's averaging 6 points more a game. I'm a Derrick Henry owner, Derrick Henry lover, but Alvin Kamara's upside with his passing, and he's got a higher floor, and I don't want to say he has a higher ceiling, but very similar ceiling, and he's got a higher floor, and I think he scores more consistently in that 20-something range than Derrick Henry. So,
and don't get me wrong, I think we can all agree Henry has the better matchup. But when you take into all those factors, it's pretty tough to get away from Kamara with all the injuries and just the game script and how that game should play out.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think there's a possibility this Tennessee-Cincinnati game could be a complete shootout. It could run away with the score, whereas New Orleans and Chicago could easily be a dud. I mean, you can definitely see it being under 41.5 points, which is what it's projected at right now. By the way, all the over-unders just got updated on FC, and I hate it. All of these are going lower. I mean, literally every single game except for Seattle and San Francisco. So just to give a little bit of a mindset here, so much leverage across the entire slate. Last but not least, Josh Jacobs here at 6.2%. He at one point was the highest owned running back on the slate here at the beginning of the week at 6.2K. 15.2%, fifth highest. Are you guys paying down for him as opposed to Jamal Williams or Kareem Hunt, or is he strictly GPP? TJ.
Definitely more of a GPP play for me. To be honest, I don't even think Josh Jacobs has really caught my eye so far. I would rather go to Jamal Williams, definitely, in terms of cash. I'd rather even spend down for a guy like Gio Bernard at 5'8". I think he shows a little more upside than Jacobs in this matchup. I understand the ownership in Josh Jacobs and why he is owned. It is a pretty decent matchup against the Cleveland Browns. Especially with the weather. I see some people talking about maybe stacking Hunt and Jacobs. I can definitely get behind that. But in terms of cash, I would rather have Jamal Williams if I'm pivoting in a tournament. And, you know, Jamal Williams is going to carry 36% ownership and Josh Jacobs is going to show, what would you have him at, 15, 17?
Yeah, 15.3.
Yeah, so if I can get Josh Jacobs at half the ownership as Jamal Williams, I would definitely do that in tournaments.
Yeah, I agree. Are you playing Josh Jacobs at all, Kevin, as opposed to Jamal Williams and Kareem Hunt?
I completely agree with TJ again. I mean, I hate to say it. I don't hate to say it. I like agreeing with him, but it's the same thing. I like Josh Jacobs' potential in GBP, and it could definitely come back to burn us. But if I'm looking at in terms of cash games, but when I'm looking at the ownership and I'm looking at who I like more around the price tag, 100% first thing I thought of was I like Jamal Williams more. And Josh Jacobs has been really pedestrian this year. He's 3.5 yards a carry, super favorable matchup. Don't get me wrong. But Jamal Williams, just with his pass catching too, is just, I like him more at that price tag. And then you only got one more running back to fit in, and we're probably going to look at Hunt or something like that for cash games. So again, yeah, right on the same page. But I think Josh Jacobs does have huge GPP upside.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think it's now time to move on to GPPs. We have about 30 minutes left in the live stream, so let me just remind everybody here, it is the very first of the month. So Patreon, again, does restart today. If you guys want to grab all the leverage sheets that we have, our favorite leverage spots, again, it updates pretty much every hour at this point, especially for this slate. If you guys want to grab updated ownerships, projections, and our favorite leverage sheets and our favorite leverage plays, feel free to sign up today. $20 a month gets you that. along with all the DFS sports going on right now. CSGO, we have Masters. TJ's going to cover that a little bit later on in the month, I believe in 12 days or so. And pretty much every sport, obviously MMA. I mean, before we got on stream, we were talking about the success. Kevin, we don't know why he doesn't throw $1,000 a slate at this point. He literally kills it every single slate. So feel free to grab all of that, plus the insight in Discord. There's a lot of coaches there who are more than willing to help everybody in there. So let's go ahead and move on to GPPs. Like I said, my favorite, I will start out CEH, Edwards-Helaire here. The only reason I like him is because of his ownership. 6.5K, which is right in that same range as some of the chalk. I think he's a great pivot because, again, if Kansas City does get out to a lead and control this game, they're going to rely on CEH or Le'Veon Bell. I'll go ahead and include them in the same sentence there. 4.6K, obviously, for Le'Veon's a lot more appealing, and they're actually carrying the exact same ownership. I don't know how accurate that's going to be, but I do love him as a pivot. I think CEH, again, has yet to have a ceiling game. I think he has so much potential. Again, with them splitting, quote-unquote, splitting the carries, I don't know who's going to be the better option, but I think one of them is going to be in the smash spot today against the Jets. Right now, the over-under did drop up 0.5 to 34. They're still projected to score the most points on the slate, so take that as you will. TJ, if you had to give a favorite running back GPP option, who would it be?
I don't know if I'm going to get slack for this, but I keep looking at these Rams running backs playing against Miami.
I'm seeing some questions in the chat about them, so you're on the...
I really like Darrell Henderson today. Yeah. Unfortunately, Malcolm Brown is a thing, which is super frustrating. But Darrell Henderson, their offensive line right now ranks number 1 in DVOA in terms of running the ball. They're playing a Miami defense that ranks dead last in DVOA against opposing running backs. And then their offensive line success, like I just mentioned, they're ranked number 3. So all things point to Darrell Henderson. Again, and even still, the Rams on a short week, played on Monday night, traveling west to east, playing Miami. All things for me point to Darrell Henderson.
Yeah.
And like I said, Malcolm Brown is a thing, and it's super frustrating because I'm a Darrell Henderson owner in terms of fantasy football. I was pretty high on him, but Malcolm Brown just won't go away, even when I'm pretty sure Kevin and I talked about this. Kev, when we were talking about the Darrell Henderson, Malcolm Brown, running back situation, it always looked like Darrell Henderson was about to overtake it. And then here comes Malcolm Brown again.
Carries in a row, and you're like, what the?
Yeah, it's like, what's happening? So, but I do like Darrell Henderson as a GPP play. He's showing very low ownership. Last weekend, Darrell Henderson had 32 offensive snaps. Malcolm Brown had 27. So it kind of seems like they're a pretty even split. He did get banged up also. I think it was late in the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter. Did come back out, so he should be fully healthy. At 5,900, I like me some Darrell Henderson this weekend for GPPs.
Real quick, I want to pause the stream because we just got a super chat, a $5 donation. Thank you so much, Trent. Trent, I know that you're a Patreon member as well, so thank you so much for your contributions. We really do appreciate it. Man. I'll go ahead and start off by he actually asked a question in the super chat. Burrows, Jacobs, Hunt, Higgins, I'm assuming T. Higgins, Hardman, A.J. Brown, Bryant from the Browns, I believe, Jamal Williams, Rams defense. If I'm assuming that's a GPP because it has Hardman in there. It says insight from the 3 of my favorite people. Thanks, boys. Good luck today. We appreciate you. Did you guys hear that lineup?
Yeah, say it one more time. Run through.
Sorry. Burrows, Jacobs, Hunt, Higgins, Hardman, AJ Brown, Bryant, Jamal Williams, Rams D.
T. Higgins, you said?
Yeah, I believe so.
Just right off the rip, there's definitely some inclement weather matchups there that might shake some people up. But I don't know. I like a lot of the players for sure.
I will be honest. I don't like Hardman today, strictly because I don't think he has too much upside. But other than that, I mean, that lineup does look pretty contrarian. I think there's some good GPP options mixed in there. So, TJ, what are your thoughts?
I do like the lineup. I'm just not too high on McCall Hardman. I think I'd rather save $200, maybe go to a guy like AJ Green at 4,500 that's seen 24 targets in his last 2 games, or even at the same price, maybe Nelson Aguilar.
Yeah, that's a good option.
At 4,700. Those are 2 guys that maybe I would look at instead of Hardman, but I don't think you're far off with that lineup.
Yeah. Completely agree. Thanks again for the donation. We were talking about running back GPP options. Did I ask TJ last? I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay. Kevin, GPP.
As me and TJ talked about and alluded to, I love that situation he's talking about, the Rams situation. It creates a lot of volatility. Will shake people off of it, but there's so much upside. And I'm going to do the same thing as I talked about with the 49ers. I'm going to attack that running back picture as much as I can. And I'm just going to get a quick update on Tevin Coleman. Do we have any update on him yet? He's playing? Okay, so you're going to have to take a kind of a swing if you're going to, obviously, because with Tevin Coleman, McKinnon, and Hasty. But I think if you get that one right, what do you guys think? Who do you think is going to be the guy? I mean, I think Hasty looked like the guy, but Jerick McKinnon, I mean, again, they paid a lot of money for this guy. They want to use him. And Tevin Coleman coming off IR, that's going to be interesting.
Who I think's going to be?
I think it's a mess, yeah.
Who I think is going to be the most productive? I'd probably lean towards McKinnon. That's just because he's shown he can. But you're right. I have no idea. Like, if I had to actually give you an honest answer, I'd probably say McKinnon if I had to say.
My hot take is one of these guys will make optimal. One of them will make optimal.
The San Francisco running backs usually do. It's always, who was it? It was Jeff Wilson last time. And he made last week's optimal. It's insane. Every single week I feel like we see a San Francisco running back or a Green Bay wide receiver make it to the optimal. Every single week.
I think one of them they're slated in a great spot to do so.
Oh yeah,
with this matchup, obviously. So I definitely think you at least take some of them. Try to get it right. I wish I could get better insight as to who's going to be the guy, but nobody knows. I don't think Kyle Shanahan knows who's going to be the guy. He's going to game's going to start and he'll go and then change. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just. But whoever the guy is going to do really well. So
If we have some 49ers insiders in the chat, feel free to give your insight.
Yeah, please. And then,
I'm pretty sure I saw sorry, Kev. I'm pretty sure I saw Tevin Coleman was saying like his legs are tired or something. And it's like, you haven't even played this year. Like, how are your legs quote unquote tired? I don't really understand that.
Really? My legs are
kind of
tired.
would. Yeah, my legs are always tired. I'd probably say like McKinnon, right? But at the same time, I think Hasty's looked better. And they didn't really go to McKinnon against the Pats. So it is pretty tough to kind of tell who that lead back is going to be. I wish there was a report telling me Tevin Coleman, because if I can get Tevin Coleman and his legs aren't tired and he's 4K and he's going to get 50 to 60% of those offensive snaps, like sign me up for Tevin Coleman for tournaments.
We've seen him have huge games too.
They rested McKinnon last week.
I hope it's Hasty.
Believe they played the Raiders. They rested him. They only played him like in 3 snaps. So that might be another reason why they might use him more in this game. Just FYI.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They played us, by the way, but yeah.
Oh, they did.
I think Hasty's the most talented, honestly,
right,
out of them. So,
all right, let's go ahead and move on, just because we're taking way too much time on the running back picture.
Move on.
I'm going to make an executive decision. We're barely going to talk about tight ends and defenses. Unfortunately, we'll get to the questions because I feel like those are more important for everybody in here. We like an interactive experience, so feel free to ask your questions in the chat. We will get to those. Wide receivers, starting at the very top. This has switched, and I cannot wait to talk about this picture. Keenan Allen at 25.7%. Yes, TJ, are you liking that chalk? Okay.
Yeah, I am.
Kevin, you liking that?
Love it.
Okay,
one of my favorite chalks on the slate.
6.2K. Obviously, nothing more needs to be said. An elite wide receiver here. Obviously, one of the best in the NFL. I know it's a bad matchup, but again, it's still Keenan Allen. He should get plenty of targets. I want to talk about the next guy, Denzel Mims.
I don't know if I do.
I want to talk about him. TJ, I believe you talked about him on air today. 24.9%. Can you talk about him again? Because I want to hear your take on this. 3.2K, by the way. Bottom of the barrel price tag.
So, all right, we got Mims, the Jets wide receivers. It's pretty funny that we're talking about one of the Jets wide receivers being one of the highest owned receivers on the slate. Pretty sad, but 3,200 offers very cheap value, and I think it's actually going to be pretty good value today. 20-point dogs against the Chiefs. We obviously have no Crowder. Rashard Perriman, who just came back, is now out with a concussion, and Hogan's missed the last 2 games. So essentially, we have Mims, Berrios, and Jeff Smith, which is maybe the second worst receiving core behind the New England Patriots. So, yeah, I know. Rookie Mims, he's 6'3", he's a pretty big body. Played last week for the first time this year. Saw 7 targets, 4 receptions, 42 yards, and actually played 79% of offensive snaps. You take Perriman out of the picture now, I could see him playing maybe 90% of offensive snaps. We don't have to worry about potential blowout here because they don't have any receivers to go to and like kind of yank those type of, you can't yank the starters when you don't have any other receivers. So I think even in a blowout, he's still good chalk. And if he's carrying that 25% ownership, Matt, I do like him for cash. I think he's a really good cheap play. Him and Kendrick Bourne right now are my 2 favorite cheapies under 3,500. But in terms of tournament and pivots off of him, I kind of like Jeff Smith at 3,300. When Perriman was out, Jeff Smith kind of filled in his role. Now, Mims is a little bit bigger on the outside. He's 6'3". Jeff Smith's only 6'1". But even still, it was Jeff Smith was that replacement to Perriman. In those 2 games, he played 95% and 96% of offensive snaps and saw 20 total targets in those games. So if I'm looking for a pivot off of Mims in tournaments, I think I'm going to take my chance with probably even Berrios. I'll take a chance with Berrios and Jeff Smith. Yeah, either one of those guys, I think you can pivot off of in tournaments. But in cash, I think Mims will probably be your safest bet.
Okay. Kevin, what are your thoughts?
Pretty similar. I'm not going to probably end up with a lot of him just because of how the slate is shaken out, but I definitely think it makes a lot of sense. And I mean, that price tag, it's not going to be too hard to hit that. So yeah, and if you want to, like I said, like TJ said, if you want to shift off that, I like Braxton personally, just because he's had 2 17-point games this year. He's proved he can do it. So
all right, now for my take. Here we go. So my process for building GPP lineups, you guys know I just play GPPs. You guys should know that by now. I don't play any cash. I rarely play cash. I have my leverage sheet, obviously have a point importance. It's a ranking. It's basically a custom projection that it gives based on the person's true upside. So let me just tell you guys this. I put in all the point importance. It basically gave the ranking based on their actual upside. And I 4-stacked. So I have my QB stack with my wide receivers, and it comes up with a nice looking point importance between the entire stack. And then it pumps out a bunch of lineups, and I crunched about 500. Do you know how many lineups had Mims in it? Out of those 500?
497.
No, zero. Zero because of his actual upside. I honestly think that Mims is probably the worst chalk I've ever seen as far as GPPs go. If you're playing Mims in GPPs, you are hoping that the Jets score over their projected 15-point total, which might even be a little aggressive.
Off the top, Matt, how many points does he need to get to be worthy in GPP at 3,200?
In GPP, well, first of all, it's more about the lineup construction. But in GPP, he literally, I mean, you're talking about like the minimal he'd have to score is probably 15 to 20 points to even make the optimal, which I think is possible. But again, from a true upside perspective, do you think that Sam Darnold and Mims are going to be in the optimal? I'm willing to bet my entire life on that they are not going to make the optimal.
No, it's the Jets. They suck.
Yeah, they suck.
You're looking at that ownership, and that's all. I think we're way too much time on the Jets.
Yeah, we are. And I just want to say, I want to take my bold take, and I think that he's fantastic chalk. I think he's going to be a great option in cash just because he can save you salary, and you can obviously pay for some of these other studs. But again, in Mims, I have 0% of Mims in all of my GPP lineups. Tyler Lockett, Devontae Adams, and Bourne. I'll name off the next 3 here. We'll speed it up. 22.2%. Devontae Adams, 20.8%. And Kendrick Bourne, 16.4%. 2 of those 3 wide receivers are coming from the same game. Seattle, San Francisco. TJ, we talked about how much we love Seattle and San Francisco. Do you agree with the next 3 chalk players?
Who are they? I blacked out.
Sorry.
You said Adams. No, that's fine. I literally blacked out.
Adams, Lockett, and Bourne. Bourne is also 3.5K.
Okay, yeah, I love Kendrick Bourne at 3,500. I do like him more than Mims too. It is tough to talk about the Jets for that long, but I do like Devontae Adams. But paying up at 8,800 is such a steep price. Seeing Cameron Dantzler, we saw what he did to them in Week 1. The Vikings secondary and their cornerbacks as a whole are completely decimated. So it should be a very good matchup for Devontae Adams, but I keep seeing the win. So I'm kind of leaning off of him a little bit more. If I could get up to him and a guy like Kamara, I would, but I feel like I have to pick and choose between him and Kamara if I want to fill out the rest of my roster the way I want to. And right now I'm leaning toward Kamara over paying up for 8,800 for Devontae Adams. Again, I was huge on Devontae Adams last week at 7,900. I think the 8,800 price tag is kind of underpriced. It's pathetic as that sounds for a guy of his talent and the targets that he's going to see from Aaron Rodgers week in and week out. I'll definitely have shares of Devontae Adams, but in terms of cash, I think I'm leaning away from him right now.
Okay.
And then Lockett and DK, good luck picking between the two. I feel like it's the same thing every single week. You pick one, you're on the other side. I think I would probably go DK over Lockett just based off of what Lockett did last week. But I think those 49ers secondary and their defense as a whole, they are getting healthier. So I definitely like the San Fran side of the house more than I like the Seattle side of the house.
Okay. I guess the true debate here is whether we're paying up for wide receiver or not. Kevin, Tyler
Right.
Lockett, 7,100, Devontae Adams, 8,800, or Kendrick Bourne, $3,500. If you had to construct a cash lineup right now, are you paying up for either Lockett, Adams, or are you paying down for Bourne?
I mean, I'd personally rather pay up for Lockett. I mean, the thing about Devontae Adams is he's not competing. You know what I mean? That's the one thing, Lockett's always going to compete, but they also have a more sound team in the Packers. The Seahawks are just in shootouts every time. You know what I mean? They have to be the team that scores more points. You know what I mean? Like, obviously you have to win a game you got to score more points, but they have to be the team that, scores 37 to the other team's 33. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, they're in those kind of games all year. It gives huge upside for Lockett. I mean, when I'm looking at Adams and Lockett in their DFS perspective, I'm not saying Lockett is as talented as Adams, but they're 1A and 1B. You know what I mean? We're looking at 40-point games. You know what I mean? So consistency, throwing bombs, 30-point games consistently. I think that Tyler Lockett is right there with Devontae Adams. He's $1,700 cheaper. Like I said, he's competing with touches. But Chris Carson's banged up. He's going to be a game time decision, which, by the way, Chris Carson is just, I don't know what's up with him. He breaks his leg and they're like, well, he's done for 3 weeks. And then by Sunday roll around, he's like, I think I'm good. I don't know. You might just be the toughest man alive.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think I like Tyler Lockett. Kendrick Bourne at 3,500. I think that for me, it offers a lot more upside too than Mims at 3,200.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think TJ said that. Just for instance, that's just so much better chalk in my opinion. Obviously, so much more upside in that wide receiver picture for San Francisco. Let's go ahead and talk about GPP options. Again, we have about 11 to 12 more minutes left on the stream, so I'm going to go straight through this. My favorite GPP option. Again, you guys talked about how much you don't like Adams at that price tag. Well, you still like him, but you just don't like him as much as some of these other guys. I think he's a great pivot option. Also, any of the Tennessee wide receivers I absolutely love because, again, Tannehill I feel like is getting overlooked, and so are these wide receivers from Tennessee. All their wide receivers are active, so pretty much I love any single one of them. A.J. Brown has been killing it, putting up wide receiver 1 numbers, so I love him in the spot today. My favorite GPP option by far. TJ, if you had to give some of your GPP wide receiver options, where are you looking?
I'm looking Kenny Golladay at 6,600, going up against Xavier Rhodes today. So a pretty tough matchup against that Colts secondary, but I think he offers some pretty good leverage at his ownership, and I think he's a little bit undervalued. I think we can just chalk him down for 100 yards as we've seen him do. Last 2 matchups against Atlanta and Jacksonville, obviously, again, draws a tougher matchup against the Colts and Xavier Rhodes. But I don't think Xavier Rhodes has looked the same since 2018 Xavier Rhodes when he was in Minnesota. So, at his ownership and his upside and just the talent that he has, I definitely like him at 6,600. Any of those Cincinnati wide receivers, I definitely like in terms of tournaments. And then, obviously, Brandon Ayuk. I'm not sure what you have his ownership at, Matt, right now.
It's up there, but it's not too far.
Yeah, so at 5,800 with no Debo, I definitely like him.
Real quick, just want to take another pause in the live stream. The most viewers we've ever had at one specific time was 219. We just broke that at 221. So pretty good milestone for us. Absolutely unbelievable, guys. Thank you so much for the support. Obviously, very humbling for all 3 of us, guys. And it just keeps going up. So thank you so much. Kevin, favorite GPP wide receiver?
I mean, I like I said, A.J. Brown. I mean, I talked about him a lot at 6,900. He's I know you guys talked about him a little bit in the Titans wide receiver, especially with how that game's supposed to go with the weather and stuff. But I definitely think A.J. Brown. I mean, he's putting up D-Hop numbers and definitely gets slept on. I know me and TJ alluded to some of these Raiders wide receivers like Nelson Aguilar and Henry Ruggs, and I think they have huge upside with that matchup as well. I think there are definitely some other ones I'm going to be eyeing and targeting, and then a couple more that are popping off every now and then. It's not a great matchup, but I think Justin Jefferson's going to carry lower ownership at his jump in price, and then like I said, tough matchup, but I think that gets the truth. So
we didn't even talk about Minnesota this entire stream. There's so many good players on that offense that are in huge boom potential spots against Green Bay.
They should be in a shootout, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Tight end real quick, within 5 minutes, we're going to cover the entire tight end position here. Kittle, Waller, Jonnu Smith is now carrying more ownership than Travis Kelsey at 14.5%. That has shifted a little bit, but Kittle, Waller, Jonnu Smith at the very top here. Kevin, I'll go ahead and start with you this time. 19.5%. We've talked about San Francisco wide receivers. I'm assuming your take is the exact same here for Kittle?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. TJ?
Yeah, I love Kittle. I think I'd rather go to Waller, though, right now. in terms of cash. I'm just looking at, the wind and the weather being a factor. Waller leads the team so far in air yards with 313, and he has the lowest average depth of target on the team at 5.6.
Oh, wow,
So
that's an
5
advanced
yards
stat.
Basically. Well, yeah. So I'm looking at wind, right, and how much of a factor
Right.
that's going to be for a guy like Derek Carr trying to get the ball down the field to guys like Ruggs and Aguilar and such. So maybe some smaller dump offs to a guy like Darren Waller. He can find him over the middle on some shortcuts, short routes between that 5 and 7 yard target. So yeah, I mean, he's basically a wide receiver in a tight end's body, right? And the Browns rank 22nd against opposing tight ends and 31st against opposing wide receivers. So I'm a little confused on the price tag given the matchup at 5,600. Obviously, if I can get up for Kittle at 7K, I would love to. But I like Waller as well at 5,600. I think you can't go wrong with either of those guys this week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one thing I also want to note about the top three here, they're all carrying very good ownership, but Travis Kelsey has dropped out of the top three. So the ownership's going down on these Chiefs, which makes me like them more for tournament plays. Obviously, Kelsey can easily make the optimum. We know that any given Sunday, especially in the game like this where they could be throwing short dump-offs. They don't need to utilize those deep threats as much in this game. So again, Travis Kelsey, another great pivot, 14.5%. GPP options real quick. I like Harrison Bryant. Obviously, not too much of a GBP option, but outside of the top 5, there's not too much to talk about here. 8.4% at 3.2K. The debate every single week is whether you're going to be paying up for tight end or pay down. I think Harrison Bryant is your obvious pay down. Do you guys agree with that? I
think for pay down, yeah, he's your obvious pay down. That's who I'm paying down for in cash games. I personally think for GPP, I like Jared Cook just because who else are they going to throw to? And he has some big boom potential with his touchdown ability.
Mm-hmm. I agree
Tough
with
matchup,
that.
but I agree, Kev. Yep. Yeah, I think Harrison Bryant's probably the spend down at 3,200. I don't hate Trey Burton at 3,500 either. Hunter Henry, I guess, at 4,200 isn't that bad. But again, I think this week is a week that I want to spend up at tight end opposed to spending down.
Yeah, you got 4 potentially elite wide receivers, tight ends. They are wide receivers at this point.
They're basically wide receivers.
Yes, 4 elite tight ends here for this slate. Let's go ahead and move on to defense. Defense, Titans 12.1%, Saints 11.6%, and then the Packers now at 9.7% because the over/under is coming down a little bit. We've already talked about this in our previous video. I don't think that too much has changed. The chalk is with these pay down teams here with the Titans and Saints. You guys are on edge about that, or on the fence, I guess you could say. 3K and 3.4K. I think the more obvious play on the slate is the Chiefs at 4.5K, which the ownership has actually come up a little bit. If you guys are putting in a defense, are you guys paying down or spending up? Kevin, I'll start with you.
I mean, I'd rather spend up. I just hate these other options. I don't like the Saints at 3,400. You know what I mean? That's a good amount to pay, and I don't have faith that they're going to have this amazing game. Titans are coming at second highest ownership at 3K. I mean, they could get absolutely rolled at 3K. No, I mean, I don't think they're going to lose the game, but I mean, Burrow could absolutely light them up. Like I said, that's not a good defense this year. I'd rather pay up for Chiefs.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's a contrarian build too. Not too many people are going to be paying that much for defense. 4,500, that is probably the most I've seen all season. But again, the matchup, they're expected to score 15 points on the Chiefs, which is unbelievable. TJ, you agree with that?
Yeah, if I can get up for the Bills, obviously that's something I want to do at 4,500. Say it again.
That's another good defense, yeah. You said the Bills. I thought you said the Bills.
You did say
the
Bills.
You want to know why I said the Bills? Because they were 4,700 last week. Yeah. So I was thinking about I do like the Bills against the Pats, unfortunately. But no, definitely paying up for the Chiefs. Sorry, I just blacked out. Definitely paying up for the Chiefs at 4,500 is something I would like to do if I can. They actually had 2 special teams touchdowns last weekend against the Broncos, playing against the lowly Jets, and that no offense, terrible defense, just a terrible team in general. Definitely a good matchup. If I'm spending down, I do actually like the Packers against Minnesota. You figure Kirk Cousins and Wind results to 3 interceptions potentially. That secondary for the Packers has been very good so far this year. So I definitely don't hate them at 2,900. If I'm going out on a limb and playing like a GPP type defense, I kind of like the Dolphins at 2,400, playing against the Rams on a short week. Again, traveling west to east, 1:00 game for them. So, with Tua, maybe a new energy. The defense hasn't been that bad. And again, I don't think the Rams offense has been as explosive as we saw last year, obviously. Higbee is, I'm pretty sure, inactive. he is active. Okay. So Higbee's in, but regardless, I like the Dolphins at 2,400 as a pump play.
I agree. The Dolphins, we talked about this too, Kevin, earlier on our first look. They've been underrated as far as their defense goes. So
Very much so.
Definitely agree with that. Let's go ahead and transition to the question Q&A segment. I'm going to have TJ go through this because obviously he can read quicker than me, I guess. Guess he's more intelligent. I don't know. Let's go ahead and start from the top here. By the way, 231 viewers. Absolutely unbelievable, guys. Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and fire away any of the questions, and we will go ahead and try to cover this as fast as possible. You're starting from the top.
All right, guys, make sure you hit that.
Yeah,
make sure you hit that like button if you could. That'd be fantastic. Thank you, guys. There are a lot of you in here, and we really appreciate it. Seriously, it means a lot to us. Starting at the top, DK Cash, Kelsey or Kittle? I think we can all agree Kittle.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. What's your thoughts on Mahomes? Are we thinking a blowout? So no Mahomes, Hill, Kelsey stack. I would definitely maybe have one of those or a couple, depending on how many lineups you're running in terms of tournaments, but definitely not a cash option.
Yeah, I had Mahomes as a C for me this week. If we're going off the tier list,
I like Mahomes and Kelsey as a safe stack.
Okay. Who breaks the slate today?
Ooh, that's a good question. Tennessee.
Slate today.
Okay.
Tennessee's offense.
I was going to say 49ers running back absolutely breaks it.
That's a good one.
49ers running back. Okay. I'm going to say, wow, that is a very tough question. Who breaks the slate? Can I count Kamara as breaking the slate?
Yeah, because that's a contrarian build. Nobody's going to be 40. Having.
I'm going to say Kamara breaks the slate.
Okay.
Any upside on these weather games? Definitely some upside, especially with those over-unders dropping. Darrell Henderson will break the slate. I love that. Love Darrell Henderson. Any love for DeAndre Swift this week? I definitely think there's some better plays than DeAndre Swift.
Not a fan of Swift this week as much as I was the previous 2 weeks.
Bad matchup, but I like the talent. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Miami Rams over-under went up 0.5 point. We'll definitely take that. Cash lineup wide receivers. I think we really like Keenan Allen. I think he's pretty good at 6,200. Kendrick Bourne at 3,500 is a good cash option, as is Denzel Mims at 3,200. I think we like Kendrick Bourne a little bit more than Mims, but I think both of them are pretty good. And if you can go up and get Devontae Adams at 8,800, I think he's a pretty good cash option as well.
I think just targeting Seattle and San Francisco in general for wide receivers would be a great option.
Yep. Waller should smash the dink and dunk game script. I 100% agree with that. Let's see. What else do we have? GPP lineup. Allen. So Josh Allen, Kamara, Jamal Williams, Marquise Brown, John Brown, I'm assuming, Valdez Scantling, Jared Cook, Kareem Hunt, and Titans D. Don't hate it. You got some low
contrarian.
With Marquise Brown, John Brown, Valdez Scantling.
I don't like the Brown boys, but it's I guess they have boom and bust weeks. I mean, it's just like Beasley's been looking good. He almost looks like the number 2 guy. I know Brown's been hurting out. That's the only issue with that. But Marquise Brown will have his boom weeks too. So
I will say we didn't even talk about Beasley. He is going underowned, and like you said, he's looking like number 2 wide receiver.
Yep. So just a correction on that 49ers debacle in the backfield. I guess it was McKinnon who had the tired legs, and I'm pretty sure I said Coleman. So thank you for that, guys. So it's McKinnon's whose legs are tired. You have to play to have tired legs, I'm pretty sure. So maybe he's growing. He's got growing pains or something. Not sure. Do you like DJ Dallas if everyone else misses? So from Seattle, I'm assuming
Homer is hurt, right?
Yeah. Say it again.
Homer's hurt, I believe.
I think Homer is going to be good to go. I know that Chris Carson is a game time decision, and then Carlos Hyde is doubtful. So I think if anything, Homer's going to be good. But if not, then you got to start running back. Decision
I just read too. So
yeah, so if they're all out and you can get DJ Dallas, it's definitely
Another good point is that game is at 425, so we won't hear about that for a while. So talk about pivot potential for low ownership, 100%.
Definitely pivot potential. Yep. Hasty breaks onto the scene second half. I love that. He's very talented. A lot of people hating on Mims. Understandable. It is a Jets wide receiver, so definitely makes sense. I'm struggling with 50-50 cash wide receivers other than Ayuk. Keenan Allen, I think, is pretty good too. We talked about Kendrick Bourne, Mims as an option if you want. There's definitely some good cash plays out there. I would play Matt at wide receiver.
That's what I was laughing at.
Spot over any on the Jets roster. Matt maybe on the outside if he can make a play, but I would definitely rather go Mims over Matt. Maybe me over Matt
6'3".
and Mims.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You're 6'3". Yeah, you're 6'3", and you run like a 5'8" 40. Corey David. What else do we have? Gus Edwards or J.K. Dobbins? Neither, I would say.
I'll say Gus Edwards.
Personally, yeah. If I were to pick, I would say Gus Edwards.
I like that. I think it's contrarian. I like it.
Okay. Corey Davis could be a good GPP play off of AJ Brown. Don't hate it. Should I change lineup due to win today? I wouldn't change it, but just, I mean, it is tough to kind of, we don't want to have weather play too much of a factor, right? But in some of these games, there are 4 games that have really high win potential. So it is tough to say. I think you don't want to go away from these games like completely, because there are guys that are in these win games that are in very good spots regardless.
Yeah.
So
the only thing that the win's going to change about the slate is it's going to be lower scoring. That's literally the only thing it's going to change. Still play good plays, like if they make sense at the wide receiver position, for instance.
Yeah, people overreact too much. Don't overreact too much.
Yeah.
Jonnu GPP, I like it. I kind of like Hunter Henry a little bit more than him at 42, but I don't hate it. Favorite stacks to end the chat in FanDuel. GPP or cash is fine. Unfortunately, we're not too versed in FanDuel. Matt, I don't know if you have any FanDuel plays for him.
I don't.
In terms
Unfortunately,
of
the FanDuel pricing when it comes to like wide receivers is completely different than DK. Okay. That's the only thing.
Stacks in general, I'm just gonna say San Fran then. Kittle or Lockett, DK Cash. Ooh, I'm gonna say Kittle. Kittle or Lockett, DK Cash.
Ooh, that is tough. I'd probably say, I don't know. That's tough. I kind of like Lockett.
I think Kittle almost has a higher floor.
Who?
Kittle.
Yeah. I don't know. I love them both, but
I love them
one or the other. Yeah, I guess I'd say Kittle.
Yeah. Garage Junkie Productions says, Sup. Roland Knight says Tyreek Hill. I could see Tyreek Hill having 2 touchdowns at halftime. Isn't weather affecting some of these plays for you? It definitely is, but there's definitely some really good plays in these weather games, especially some running backs that, could see some higher upside and some more total touches if the weather and the wind is that big of a factor. How many quarterbacks, Matt, would you play in a 20 max? How many different quarterbacks do you think you'd get to?
How many different? 5? I was like, you can only play one. I don't know what he's talking about. How many different? Depends on the size of the contest. I know you guys hate when I say that. I would probably play about 4 to 5 if you're looking at stacks, because I think there's about 4 to 5 that stand out to me, and we've already talked about them. So,
so guys, love the show. Question: Steelers or Rams? D. Steelers for me.
I'm gonna go Rams.
I'm gonna go Rams.
I'm testing Tua.
Okay. I think Miami wins today. Thoughts on Gaskins? I like Gaskins, especially with Tua. We don't know how the offense is going to go. They could rely on him a little bit more. Very cheap at 5,200. Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Jonathan Taylor in flex for cash. I'd go Helaire.
I hate Jonathan. I don't hate him, but he just has not done that good this year. He really hasn't. Like, go look at his numbers. Has not been that productive at his price tag.
5.8 KEKW. Pog. I know that, Matt. Pog. That means LOL, right? I think so. Steelers is a contrarian defense. What's their ownership? Very low ownership. Pretty good contrarian defense.
They're actually one of the lowest. Line of thinking. I think they're the lowest on the slate. They literally are 0.8%. So,
does the fact that since the offensive line is missing 4 starters make you detour from Burrow? They're really missing 4. I thought they were only missing 2. That's definitely not great, but I still like Burrow and the upside, especially as a home favor, or as a home underdog. That's the word I was looking for. No, not player. No, home underdog. They're 7-point dogs to Tennessee, so I still definitely like Burrow regardless of the offensive line situation. He's just gonna have to get rid of the ball faster.
Yeah.
And what else do we have here?
Some more coming in there at the end.
Am I crazy for stacking Pittsburgh? Big Ben has been throwing some darts this season. Kind of crazy, but I don't hate it. This is a tournament play.
I will say this. I think I had like one lineup with Pittsburgh out of my 150. I don't like Pittsburgh today. I just don't think they present as much more. I don't think they present as much upside as the Ravens do, even in that game.
All right, a couple more questions, guys. Thoughts on Hunt? We obviously love Hunt. GPP, Hunt or Kamara? It's a pretty big price discrepancy.
Because of the ownership.
I would say Kamara, the ownership. Last question. We're going to end with this, guys. Could you see Le'Veon Bell take TDs from Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Yes.
Absolutely. That's why I said I like them both for GPP.
Last one, James White or Hasty? I'd go James White.
Yeah, I guess you know more about that. All right, let's go ahead and end on this note, guys. Again, thank you so much for the support. 234 viewers at one time is the most we've ever had. So obviously a growing DFS channel, guys. If you did enjoy the content, again, please do hit that like button. Also, Patreon, $20 a month. It just resubbed. Again, the very first of the month, you get the full value of $20. $20 gets you an entire cheat sheet for every single sport. Shows you where to find the edge. Again, I put a lot of effort into that. This is my full-time job, so I do this all day, every day. I'm a stat nerd. TJ will tell you that. Kevin will tell you that. They hate how nerdy I am when it comes to the stats. So let's go ahead and end on that note, guys. Thank you so much. Any last words, guys? That's it.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Honestly,
Appreciate the love and support. Yeah.
Thank you so much. With all that being said, have a great rest of your Sunday, and let's cash.
Let's cash, guys. Good luck.